What are fairies? And more importantly, why does every culture mention them? Now, when most people hear the word fairy, they imagine something small, delicate, harmless, a decorative creature, a helper, a fantasy mascot. But that version of fairies is a very modern invention. And across history and across cultures, fairies were never understood as cute. They were understood as present. They needed to be watched, avoided, and sometimes appeased. In their earliest appearances, fairies were not companions to humans. They were non-human intelligences that occupied the same landscapes, but they didn't operate by any human rules. Now, in mythology, fairies are best understood by not how they look, but what they do. They were consistently described as being tied to specific places: forests, rivers, hills, caves, crossroads. They appear at boundaries between wilderness and settlements, between life and death, between day and night. And they are very territorial. They respond to respect and also to violation or disrespect. But most importantly, they've never been really framed as purely good or evil. So they're framed by a different kind of being morally alien to humans. And this is one of the most consistent features of fairy lore. Fairies do not necessarily share human ethics. They follow their older systems of obligation, balance, and consequence. And this makes especially striking encounters when we talk about their depictions. While European folklore, particularly Celtic traditions, preserved extensive fairy narratives, similar beings appeared across Africa, Asia, and indigenous cultures worldwide. And this is an important distinction that we need to get out there, that fairy mythology is not exclusively European. European did not invent these things. It documented one regional expression of a far older global pattern. And that's what we're looking at. In Celtic traditions, the Psyche are often portrayed as aristocracy. They are powerful and very dangerous. They inhabited hidden realms that overlap with the human world. They enforce strict rules and they punish any disrespect. Now, in African traditions, forest spirits and little people are not playful creatures. They are guardians of the land, enforcers of natural orders, and tricksters who test human behavior. And across Asia, natural entities were tied to mountains, rivers, and trees exhibit all the same traits. They reward respect, retaliate against arrogance, and operate on timescales unfamiliar to humans. In indigenous traditions across the Americas, they describe beings that were ancestral, intelligent, and deeply tied to places. Beings that do not belong to humans, but tolerate them under certain conditions. These are different names, different aesthetics, but the same behaviors. And there are some stories that are strikingly familiar about dealing with fairies. First, do not eat their food ever. Do not accept gifts without understanding the cost. Do not wander where you're not invited, and do not break agreements with them. Another thing is that time distortion is a reoccurring theme. Those who encounter fairies often return changed, aged, displaced, or disoriented, as if time itself behaves differently now in their presence. And these patterns appear too consistently across too many cultures to be dismissed as coincidence. Because of this, fairy myths function less like entertainment and more like instruction manuals. These are not stories meant to comfort children, these are stories meant to teach caution. They warn humans that the world is not solely theirs, that intelligence exists beyond human society, and that nature itself may be inhabited, aware, and responsive. So why do these stories persist? Myths do not survive for thousands of years because they are just pure imagination. They survive because they are useful. They encode memory, they preserve experience, they compress encounters into symbols and narrative. Whether fairies are interpreted as spirits, intelligences, or something entirely different, mythology presents a clear message. Humans across the world sensed something that was watching, responding, and remembering. And rather than dismiss it, they recorded it. Fairies then may not be the creatures humanity invented, but they are an intelligence humanity ultimately named. And understanding them begins not just with fantasy, but listening careful to the warnings our ancestors left behind.